Good morning, everyone. I think part of my introduction is just simply that I love what I do. I love working with people that want to improve, um, even things like family, things that we've grown up people, and while we're not going to improve people, we're going to talk today about improving ourselves. And that's what fascinates me and what I love about what I do. I get to work with people who want to continually find improvement in ourselves, in the way we respond to the world around us. And there's so many things going on in the world around us that affect us individually, but also that affect the people around us that we call family. And so I'm very excited to be here with all of you to talk about family wellness as part of this series. And so I want to thank Maribel, I want to thank Carmen, I want to thank our department and our organization for this space, for allowing me to lead a conversation this morning in this space to talk about wellness as it relates to the family, which is unique. We've just gone through and we're in the middle of the second month of this year. In the middle. Here we are, February 16th, 18th. Oh, see that? I don't know what happened to the last couple of days, but here we are in the last half of the second month of this year. We've just gone through what many consider to be family time. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and now we just went through another uh, holiday that paints this picture in the media of how things should be. We just went through Valentine's Day last week. And the media says, if you love this person, buy them these expensive gifts, give them all of these things. And the same thing happens throughout the rest of the year in all these holidays. It's become so commercialized. If you love your child, you'll buy them this expensive gift. If you love your partner, if you love your parents, etc. Um, and I think that a lot of us are frustrated, perhaps. I've heard that from a lot of people, and I do a lot of trainings in Visión y Compromiso. I'm one of the senior managers for our education department. And as I go around to different groups throughout the state, I hear that same thing about how complicated and complex things have become. They have. They certainly have, as long as we allow them to be that. One of the things that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the family, which is something that many of us grew up with. We all grew up with a family. And maybe as we've seen the commercials over the last few months, it's not that family that's idealized by the media. It's not that family. It's a different family. It's a different combination of individuals who have lived perhaps under the same roof. Maybe it's a different makeup of the family that is no longer traditional. We talk about a traditional family. We'll talk about that. We'll talk today about a traditional family, and we'll compare it to the kind of family that we each have. And so, again, I think it's a very important conversation because as things are rapidly changing in our political and social world, our family, especially the youngest ones, especially the ones without the life experience that we as adults have, are finding it very difficult to understand all this change, all these changes, all the threats, all the perceived threats that are going on out there. They wake up this morning, it's a school morning. They appreciate the structure that we've built for them within underneath our roof and with the other people that we share that space with. And that's what they look forward to. But I think we all, in some way, look forward to what we've created within family. And we're here today, I'd like to know why, to talk about family wellness. And so before I present my PowerPoint, before I present my ideas, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear from you and welcome you all. And I see people that I know. We have quite a few people in this Zoom space. And I see someone that I haven't seen in a while, and I want to welcome Irmari. Irmari, welcome. Irmari is joining us all the way from Florida. And so I really welcome you, Irmari. It's a pleasure to see you again. And I welcome the rest of you. And I don't know where you're joining us from, but if you could let us know, why you're here this morning, why this topic is important to you. You can open up your mic. Let's take about three comments, and then for those of you who don't want to open your mic, let's hear from you on the chat, on this chat function. Okay, so please text us in. Why are you here? Why is this topic important to you? And for those of you who would like to open your mic and your camera, as uh, as you were invited to do so earlier, please feel free to do so. Who'd like to start? Why are you here this morning? Why is this topic important for you? Do we have any takers?
I can go.
Abby, good morning,
Hey,
Abby.
good
Hi, where are you
morning.
calling in from, Abby?
From Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Northwest Arkansas.
Hey, Arkansas. And, and first of all, Abby, I hope you're nice and warm. I understand that there's such a temperature change going on out there, and so we send our positive thoughts and warm thoughts your way. So go ahead, Abby. Why is this topic important for you?
Thank you. It's important for me because I've always said, in order to help other people, you need to be good yourself. And it's especially mentally. Um, and sometimes I feel like we forget about ourselves and we're only there supporting our clients and thinking about them. I'm so sorry. I'm working from home because of the storm and my son's here. Um, but yes, that's the main thing I believe in. Working on your mental health is very important. In order to help others, you need to be good yourself.
Absolutely, Abby. Absolutely. You're touching on one of the more important topics. We would really want to highlight how you care for yourself. There was a study that was done not that long ago, and I can get anybody who's interested, I can get you the citation. There was a study that was done on emotional wellness of the adults in a household. And let's talk for a moment because that particular study was done on the traditional family that has a mom, a dad with kids. And in that traditional family, many families were studied, and they looked at emotional health of mom. And when mom is having a really good day, just a few hours later, the kids will reflect that good day that mom is having. And then whenever mom has a down day, whenever mom is having a little bit of difficulty with her emotions, then the kids just a couple of hours later will reflect that. In comparison, when dad or father figure is having a bad day, it takes a couple of days for the kids to reflect that, fully reflect the father figure's emotions. So, mom's emotions are more closely connected to and tied to a child's response to those emotions. So, that's just something to keep in mind. If I, as a mom, am not feeling well, if I'm not taking care of myself, my kids will very soon reflect that confusion, that anger, those feelings that perhaps I'm not managing well. Let's just keep that in mind. And Abby, thank you so much for starting us off. I've got a couple of comments here that I want to read. Sandra from Los Angeles, thank you, Sandra, for chiming in. She says, we as mothers need self-care and patience. Absolutely. And you have several little hearts associated with that comment. Paola says, I'm here because of the emotional tax we pay due to the nature of our job. I want to make sure I'm taking care of myself to be able to help others. Absolutely. Jessica, thank you. You agree. You say the same thing. Mental health is important for me because my brain moves me and my world around me, says Ella. Thank you, Ella. And then Lisa from Boise, Idaho. Love it.
3 libras de milanesa de pollo. Sí.
And Irma, that sounds delicious. Milanesa de pollo. That sounds wonderful. I haven't had breakfast yet, so that sounds amazing. Lisa from Boise, Idaho, welcome. Mental health and emotional well-being is incredibly important to me. I believe that when I'm at my best, I'm able to give my full support to those I'm helping, creating a positive cycle of care and growth. I think we have one more. Irmani. from Florida says, as a CHW, a community health worker, working in and with the community, it's important to take care of ourselves first. Absolutely. And we've heard this, those of us who fly or who have flown in an airplane before, you know, before the flight takes off, the attendant comes in and says, before you, if should something should happen in the cabin and the cabin loses pressure, you'll have the oxygen masks that drop. Please make sure to put yours on first before you put the oxygen mask on a child or someone dependent. And that happens, everyone, because in just a matter of seconds, if there's no oxygen in the cabin, people begin to pass out. I've been in 3 situations in my whole life where the pressure in the cabin is lost. And I've seen people just become very weak and just kind of doze off. They pass out because they lack oxygen. Imagine, because I think that's a great metaphor for life. If we no longer have the strength, the emotional strength to go on about our very busy, very stressful day, how can our kids who follow so closely behind us, how can they learn how to do that? So with all of your comments, let's dive into what is family wellness. Let's dive in. And at this point, I do want to ask if anybody else wants to comment and want to open their mic and comment. I also want to ask our other colleagues here from Visión y Compromiso. Andrea Lizama is one of our facilitators. Maria del Carmen Aparicio, or Carmen, as we love calling her. She is our facilitator coordinator. And Maribel, as you know, she's one of our directors for a national department. And so we want to ask them if they have anything to chime in. And we have another hand as well. So colleagues, anything that you'd like to add? Okay, very good. Thank you. Adriana, please go ahead. Go ahead and open your mic.
Thank you. Good morning. Sorry, I cannot open my camera.
That's okay.
For me, it's important first for me, and then for my family, and then for my community. And then I think it's important because we need a lot of support right now in our, also for me too, because this thing happen right now is very stressful for everybody. So I think if I am okay, I can help anybody. If you am worried or I have feelings like maybe stress or maybe with panic attacks, it's gonna be hard to help others. So I need to be okay, me first, and then my family and my community. I
Yes.
can help everyone, anybody. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adriana, for that. Yes, and you are right. And it just echoes what it is that we've been hearing this morning. So I'm going to share my screen, everybody, and we'll have a chance to see a few of the slides here on your screen. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right one. And let me start the view. Let's see, slideshow. Okay, that should get us to the beginning. And as the slides are loading, I just want to say that this is a topic. Family wellness is a topic that I'm really thrilled about. For many years, I worked with a number of school districts in Southern California, bringing to those districts family wellness programs. They were based on emotional and social intelligence in the family. And so a lot of that will come out today. I feel like I'm going to be in front of parents again, but I know that you parents, a lot of you are also promotoras, community health workers, and any of the titles that we hold in this very important work. We are frontline individuals. We set the tone, we set a model for others, and people follow us. And all of this to say, I'm speaking here today with a group of leaders, community leaders, and that's what I consider you all to be. So it's a pleasure to introduce this PowerPoint for you, and let's go through this. And as Maribel said, we're going to talk for just about an hour or so, and then anything that you do not want to talk about during this recording, we will have, after we stop recording, we will continue talking a little bit more about more personal or more sensitive issues. So hold tight to your questions if that's the case. If not, let's fully participate by opening our cameras if you can, and then opening up the microphone whenever you want to chime in once we go through one of the topics, okay? So our topic today, family wellness and emotional health. And again, I am Jerry Balcazar, one of the managers within Visión y Compromiso. So let's go ahead and move on. What will we cover today? You know, we talked a lot about what should be in this 1 hour presentation, 1 hour dialogue. And we talked a lot about, number one, identifying what is the concept of family. Everyone has a different concept of family. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. What is our individual concept of family? How do we construct this family? How did we come to construct it? Because we all construct families. We come from families that are constructed by others. And I think most of us, maybe not all of us here, have now constructed our own family. What are some of those constructs? What are some of those building blocks that we used to construct our family? And what are the factors that affect our family's wellness? We say the family in general, but really want us to focus on our own family. What factors affect our family's well-being? We'll talk about factors that create risks for our families. What's going on in our family that's creating the risk of distancing ourselves, the risk of not communicating in a healthy way, the risks of spending too much time in things that aren't healthy for our family? What are some of those risks? And then flipping it around and asking, what are some of the things that we are doing that are helping our family, that are supporting and strengthening our family? Because we have to be able to look at both. We are all doing things that are good for our family. Let's think about that for now. Let's identify it just a little bit later. And let's make sure that we understand what we are doing well, because we're all doing good things for the family. Even being here today is something that's going to help strengthen your family. So we'll talk about those factors. And then finally, the importance of validating emotions, thoughts, values within the family for our starting with our own. What are my values? What are my thoughts? What are my feelings about everything that happens every day? What are they? And being good to ourselves, validating ourselves for having those. And then also validating our family members' thoughts, emotions, and values. So that's what we want to cover. It's a lot. And we could spend days and days. And I think some of these topics we will eventually bring back in another workshop and another one of these webinars and just tease out that particular topic based on your comments today. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Maribel, that this is the first one, right? So we're here kicking this series off. All right, fantastic. So we're excited to then hear from you as we go through and then afterward as well. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk first about defining family. I'd like to ask all of you to, again, in the chat, answer this question if you would. What does family mean to me? What does family mean to me? If anybody wants to open up their mic, if any, if you want to put it down in the chat, let's get a definition of family. Let's hear, rather, the different definitions of family. Put yours down. What does family mean to you? What is that definition? And I'll wait for just a moment to see what comes up in the chat. And I want to do this, dear colleagues, because I don't want to give you the definition. As a matter of fact, I can't give you the definition of family. I can give you a definition. I can look that up on Google. If you Google family, oh, there's probably 250,000 pages that appear in less than a second. And you can choose whatever definition you want. And I can do that, but I won't. I want you to tell us what that means. Yes, Adriana, please go ahead.
For me, support and companion. We can have a family, not our blood family. We can have like group, like community. Like, is for me is companion and support and
Wonderful, Elena. Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's what your definition, that your meaning of family for you. Um, Somebody says family means connection and love. Those people that are important and close to me. It could be uh, blood or not blood related. Okay. The people I have chosen to give my love to and protect with every fiber of my being, says Michelle. That's very powerful. Nobody left behind. Together, love, support, says Lisa. Absolutely. Love people who love you and love them. Elida, that's quite a broader meaning of family for you. Um, Elida, thank you. Family is my people, my support, the people around me, says Ilmari. Thank you. Okay. Family to me um, is my all my loved ones, those I'm related to, my chosen family, and my furry family, of course. And I know a couple of our Visión y Compromiso family who also have furry family members and no human members within their family other than their partner. And that's exactly how they uh, define family. It's understanding, no, I'm sorry, it's everything love, support, understanding, forgiveness, patient prayers. Wonderful. And so there's a few more comments here. Families, mom and dad, and children living together in a home. Thank you, Elvia. For you, that's what family means. For others, as we hear, it's different, right? It's different. The traditional family was for many, many people made up of mom, dad, the kids, maybe a pet or two. That's a traditional family. And traditional because that was very common. Over the last few decades, the meaning of family and the definition of family has changed quite a bit. Now we have a number of different ways of constructing our family that are much more accepted, much more recognized than before, right? We have a family that often involves just one adult or parent and at least one or more children, single parents. We have care providers that are raising kids, abuelita, right? Grandma, grandpa, uncles, older brothers or older siblings that are raising the children when the parents are no longer present, right? We have foster homes where children live and where they're raised by foster parents. And eventually, those parents may no longer be in those children's lives. We have homes where there are same gender adults, two men raising their children, two females raising their children, right? Two moms. In some cases, there are kids who are being raised by neighbors who they consider to be their parent figures when the biological parents aren't there, right? So there's so many definitions of family, and it's changed. It's changed because of a number of different societal movements, societal changes. So I want to ask at this point, I want to ask you all to tell us how have you created your concept of family? How have you created your concept of family? Think about that. And I think what I want to do is I want to jump to the next question because it's so tied together. How have you created your concept of family? And the next question is, let me see if I can, sorry, move this. Here we go. And see if any of these apply. That your family's construction was influenced by your culture, your society that you're living in, and your personal views. Also, you may have created your family by choice, maybe through adoption. Maybe you adopted your furry family members. Maybe you adopted a child. Biologically, maybe you had children with somebody else, right? So there's different ways of constructing the family, and the concept of family, as we've mentioned, has changed over time. It's adapted to different societal views and needs. And I'm going to be very straightforward. I'm going to be very transparent about what I'm going to say. And again, I believe that in this group, we can respect different views of family. This is a safe space where we can all, as adults, as leaders in the community, we can listen to different perspectives about how others view family, how they've constructed family, what family means to them. And while we may not agree, we can still listen, we can still respect, and we can still keep an open mind because not everyone in our community is going to feel the same as we do about family. And that is also why we're having this discussion, so we can listen to different viewpoints. So I'd like you all to think about how you constructed your family, and then how has that construction changed over time? And I'm going to start us off. I'm going to start us off, and I want to say that I am very blessed to have had the experience of several different families that I've been a part of. I've been a part of my own biological family, my mom, my dad, my two brothers, younger, and myself. I've had the experience of having a family for a few years that involved my partner at the time and her son. I had another experience in my life where it was my wife at the time, three kids, and then one of them, the oldest, had the person I consider to be my little soulmate, my non-biological grandchild. I've had that wonderful experience. It's taught me a lot about how families are constructed, but it's also taught me a lot about how families change and why, in my experience. I'd like to hear from you. How has your family been constructed, and have there been any changes along the way? Because those changes affect us, and those changes also affect the younger one's well-being in the family.
Yeah, can I? Sorry,
Sure, Adriana,
you
please.
can hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Adriana.
Yeah, I think like you say, first is our family. We have the model from them, from my father and my mother, and my brothers and sisters, and then we make in my case, I make a family with my husband, and I have two kids with him, and I divorce and I get married again, and I have one more kid. So now my family is my three daughters, my husband, and my husband has sons and daughters also. So I mean, we are a big family. And that's my second marriage. So now me and him are alone because our kids are making their families now. So it's so many kinds of different types of family. One of my daughters married and then divorced, and then the other one is has partner.
Mhm.
It's no marriage, but it's different kind of families now.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Adriana. I appreciate that. So again, you started off in what probably your culture, your society said, this is the way to form a family. And because of different factors, now you formed a family, another family in a different way. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Fabiola?
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I am going to jump in and um, and share a little bit about my family. So the way that it was constructed, yes, of course, it was society, culture, all of those things. But personally, I was born into a family, and then my mother separated my biological father. And then I moved in with my mother. Obviously, we all moved in with my stepfather when I was very, very young. I was a baby. I don't even remember. I was maybe like 2. And he was my father. And I always knew he was my stepfather, right? I always knew he was not my biological father. And navigating that in the 80s in Mexico was difficult for me because my mother wanted to protect me. So I was never allowed to say that he was my stepfather until I was, older. And my mother tried to put me into some schools in Mexico City, and they wouldn't allow me in because I came from a divorced family. So there was that restriction on families that had that composition. So it took me a while until maybe when I was like an early teenager, when I was like, I'm going to start disclosing that he is my stepfather, and that, because I see no difference in the way that he loves me and the way that he loves his biological children. So that's like just the early years on how that impacted me. And of course, it impacted me in the way that I see family composition and how I have been more open to and accepting. And I still have my my things, but but that's a good start from there. And then now that I have my father, my no, not that I have my husband. Sorry. Oh no, that's like what would Freud say? Okay, so now now that I have my husband, his mother, my mother-in-law has always been very accepting, and we come from different religion, different culture, different country, different language, different everything. But she shared that when her sister got married, she married outside of all of those things. And it was very hard for her. It was so hard for her. And that was like many years ago, like, I don't know, 50 years ago. And it was so hard on her. And some of her own family members actually, truly, how do you say that? They disavow her? Like,
What was the word?
disown. Thank you, Diane. Thank you. They disown her. Some of the family members disown her sister. So she's also very accepting, right? And so I think, there's like this trait of acceptance in my life that I wanted to share with you.
Wonderful. Fabiola, thank you. What a rich history. What a rich a path your family has taken. And now here you are, sharing this amazingly rich history. It can be rich. And through these experiences, we learn, we become wise as we eventually share our wisdom with newer families, newer people in the family who are starting their own. It's this wisdom, that we've acquired through these changes. And I'm going to go back to sharing this screen because I want to share with you this next slide. And it really just recaps what we just talked about. We experience these changes in the family through, we reconstruct what we believe is family through life changes. Through life changes, and you shared some of them, Fabiola. When my own father passed away, all of a sudden, my family was different. Physically, it was my mom and my 2 younger brothers. That was family. And we are a very small family in the US, right? And so, yeah, that absolutely became our definition of family is my mom and my 2 brothers. In our hearts, it was still my dad, right? But yeah, life changes can certainly bring those kinds of unexpected or major changes to our family. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to.
Can I say something else, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Adriana. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's very important when you have the model from your biological family. When you see the problems they have, sometimes we trespassing to our kids. And then in my case, violence and alcoholism. And when I make my own family, I get exactly the same men like my father. So that's why I divorced. And then when my first daughter marriage, she got same man. That's why she divorced. And then my other daughter, she has a partner. So I didn't affect our lives when we start making our families. We have the moral from our parents, and it's very difficult to get the first kids when we make our family. It's difficult for them to make their own family. So
Mhm.
with my second marriage, I make different. I raised my daughter different than my first daughters, and I think she has a better life. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Thank you very much for that. Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're saying. Our experiences then shape future families, right? So how does the reconstruction of this concept of family work? Well, we again, we face different life situations. Some of those situations may involve healing relationships or creating healthier relationships. People talk about separation and divorce. It is unfortunately a fact of life for many people, and that changes the structure and the concept of family. Adjusting to or overcoming crises. Again, death is one of those things that while we don't like to talk about, it really reshapes family and family structure, family roles. So all of those things helped to help us to reconstruct this concept of family. And how do we manage that? How do we manage that reconstruction? Well, we believe, as we've talked about this topic, that there is mutual respect for everyone in the family, whether they are 80 years old or 8 years old, mutual respect, emotional support for each individual in the family, and healthy communication. These three are absolutely key. These three concepts are absolutely key to maintaining strength in our family. And when we have a strong and healthy family, that is where most of us source our wellness from. They are often, these are the individuals, and this concept of family is what wakes us up in the morning, what motivates us throughout the day, inspires us, and we find motivation in that throughout the day. And this is what at the end of the day we say, it's been a very tiring day, very tiring week, but look what I've built, look what I've strengthened, look what I've done with my family, right? So family often is where we source and where we give back a lot of our energy, a lot of our work. Okay, so those are some of the things. Let's go into the factors that affect our family's wellness. We've heard from some of you already that changing political and social climates are things that place our family at risk. And I think that we could, if we spent the time, we could figure out a lot of things that are affecting or placing our family at risk. But you know what? I'd rather do something that's a little more challenging with this group. Let's talk about protective factors. Because the risk factors, many. There are immigration factors, there are social media that really provides a different set of values for our children than parents do, right? Sometimes parents are at odds. They're fighting with social media to to instill values into our kids. We fight with social media. We fight with the political environment. We fight with the fears of all of these threats around immigration policy, etc. We're fighting, and we're all those things are placing our family at risk for stress, frustration, fear, etc. We can make a long list of those. But let's counter those. Let's focus on protective factors. What are some protective factors that you believe help you strengthen your family's wellness? Let's focus on those. And I think this is where we're going to find a lot of richness from this group. What are some protective factors that are present in your family that you would like to share? What are some of those protective factors? Let's hear from the group.
Trust.
Thank you, Abby. Trust. We're going to talk about trust. And trust is one of those elusive things. How do you develop trust? We're going to talk about that, Abby. Thank you for starting us off with a very important factor, trust. What else?
Respect and love. Respect and love.
Respect and love. Thank you, Adriana. Again, very elusive. Respect is elusive. Love is elusive. There are so many forms of loving someone. How do you get someone to love you back? How is that inspired? What else? Trust, respect, love.
Resources.
Resources, Elvia, excellent, excellent. So we learn where the resources are that will strengthen our family, that will provide protection, if you will, security. What else? What else? Who believes that time?
Confidentiality.
Adriana, one more time, please.
Confidentiality.
Confidentiality. Yes, confidentiality. And that's also quite an elusive one, Adriana, because there are things that my son or daughter might tell me, and it might be something that's happening in their lives that they don't want to tell somebody else. And that somebody else may be an adult. But then what's my role? What's my role? Do I maintain that confidentiality with that young person? Or do I tell my adult person or partner what's happening in that young person's life? Is that breaking confidentiality? That's a very elusive
I
one.
think it's important that they make the young kids make a confidentiality with one parent,
Mhm.
and then the other one can talk. The parents we can talk. That's the way I raised my daughter. She has more confidentiality in me, and then I talk with my husband, and we make a decision. But I am the one make a bridge with them,
Yes.
and then when we have to resolve the problem, we talk together, and we resolve the problem what she has. But she don't have the confidence to tell him what happened. So that's the bridge. I am the bridge with
You're the
them,
bridge.
and I think
Yeah.
that's the way we can make a better life for the kids.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so what you're alluding to here is you're talking about communication. Maybe there is healthier communication. Maybe there's more open communication with you than perhaps your husband. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. But I think in this case, the young person in your family understands that you won't keep a secret from your husband, that you, as parents, as co-parents, as the adults in the household, you'll have to share that information, right?
Yeah. But first, I talk with her to ask her, tell your father this because this is no option.
Yes,
It's me and him, and she decided to say yes. You can talk to him because she cannot talk with him.
yes.
That's why.
Wonderful, wonderful. But here again, I think that the key there is the healthy communication. And I think that's incredibly important. Um, I talked about some of the stressors in the family, some of the things that are affecting a family and places them at risk of being emotionally unwell, where maybe that emotional wellness index, that emotional wellness amount or level is lower. And here are some examples. I didn't want to go through them with you all. I just wanted to touch on them, but stress is one of the major ones. Stress around finances, stress around health and illness, stress around work issues, right? Whether it's the time spent away from home because of work, etc., the finances, especially now that everything's much more expensive, health issues, illness, emotional illness, right? Emotional unwellness, mental health. Those all are great stressors on the family. Unhealthy communication, misunderstandings, right? Misunderstandings and conflict, unresolved conflict. There will always be differences in a family, but if those differences are not resolved well, they could turn into conflict. And that sometimes creates unhealthy communication because of strong emotions. And then the next one is very tied to that, and is the lack of emotional presence. If I, as an adult, cannot put my emotions aside to listen to my other family member who wants to say something to me, then that's what we mean by emotional absence or lack of emotional presence. There's little empathy. I can't put myself in that person's shoes because I'm dealing with my own emotions. So there's little empathy and affection in those situations. And that is what is called emotional presence, in this case, lack of emotional presence. And then major life changes, as we talked about earlier: separation, divorce, loss of employment, illness, moving, etc. And we can add many, many more to these, to these big buckets of risk factors. Okay. Now, with all of the things that you believe you are doing to strengthen your family and to counter, to reduce those risk factors, we all probably are doing it for a reason. We have this vision in our heads and in our heart for what we want to see in our family. And this is important that we recognize this vision. Maybe we haven't shared it, maybe we have with the others in our family, but a family is a team. A family is a team that rows together. A family is a team that works together, where the kids are not helping with chores, they are responsible for chores. Where each individual in the family has a responsibility and everybody else knows what those are. We support each other in this family to complete our responsibilities. So it's not helping out mom or helping out dad in the house, or younger brother or sister, or older brother or sister. It's everyone carrying through their responsibilities to strengthen the family. We're working as a team. Why? Is it just to get through the day, or is there something more? Are we working for something beyond the day to day? What do I want for my family? Take a moment to visualize why you're all working so hard. Why are we all working so hard for the family? Put it in the chat. If you can, write it in the chat. What is your vision for your family? What do you envision? Good health. Strive to model all of the above from the start or throughout the cycle of life, from newborn to childhood, teen, adult, and older adult. Beautiful. Okay, good. I see quite a few. I see quite a few. Economic security. So these are really important. So they will have a better life than I did, filled with peace and freedom, and facilitating peace and freedom for others. Wow. That's amazing. That sounds absolutely wonderful. These are great visions that we have for our family: health and prosperity, mental, emotional, physical, financial stability, and security. That's absolutely wonderful. This is what inspires us to do all this work. And so let's talk a little bit about what is it that I want for my family, and more importantly, what is it that I need to do to do that? So other families have said that they want to provide a safe and respectful space. Others have said that they want a place where they can validate their own feelings, thoughts, and values, to create a space to enjoy fun moments, where they can have healthy conversations with everyone. Again, not it doesn't matter if they're 80 or 8. An 8-year-old can have very healthy and very fun conversations, right? And so others have envisioned this family to be a place for me and for others to share. So these are just some things that we can keep in our minds for the horizon, and to begin to explicitly state them when we sit down together for family meals, when we're in the car together. Let your family know what you want for them. They see you as a leader. We see you as a leader. They're going to as well. What do you want? And often, because we work in health, we're asked, what is your vision of a healthy community? Well, in this case, your children, if they haven't asked you right out, they probably wonder, why do we do all this, Mom? Why do we do all this, Dad? And this is what you can respond. What you just wrote and what is on the screen, this is what you can respond. Now, the question is, what does it take to get there? What will it take to get there? And again, some of the things that we're going to be talking about over the next hour is self-care, because we have to start with ourselves. If we are not caring for ourselves, we might go through the motions of caring for somebody else, but they will feel the difference between doing it in a full-on, heartfelt way or as just something that we're going through the motions to do. You can pour cereal into a bowl, but the child will know what's in your heart when you're pouring that cereal. Your child will know. Your family members will know. They'll sense it. Okay, so practicing self-care, we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about validating thoughts, feelings, and values to create healthy relationships and create safe spaces. We're going to talk a little bit about spending quality time. I wanted to make sure just to list this, spending quality time. And within that quality time, it's not so much, oh, I'm going to spend 10 minutes of quality time. That quality time that you spend is where you want to share fun times. And with all the families I've worked with before, let me say this. If you put on your calendar, I'm going to spend 10 minutes of quality time with my son today, or with my child, those 10 minutes, if you're having fun, will stretch into 15 or 20 or 30 minutes. And that will become the most important thing that you're doing at that moment in your day. And of course, we have meetings, we have other things that we need to get to, but it's not about spending quality time in a set amount. It's about really making sure that that quality time opens up your heart and their heart to create those fun, special moments. And then the last one that we may not get to today, but I know we're probably going to have a webinar on this, is to manage conflict, those differences that are now difficulties. How do you manage them in healthy ways? So that's what we're about to get into. Okay. Now I want to stop for just a second and I want to see where we are with all of this. I want to ask for your feedback. How are we doing? How are we doing with these topics? How are we doing with this space? Let me stop sharing for just a second. And let me hear your comments at this point. Okay, let's see what we have in the chat. I want my family to be safe, happy, and secure. I want them to succeed in life and add beauty and kindness to the world. That reminds me of a song. I can't remember who does the song, but it's called What the World Needs Now. Right? I don't remember who does that song, but there's a beautiful rendition out there that I've heard before. What the world needs now is love, sweet love, with a lot of skills to back it up. Okay? Making my family feel secure, that they can walk with no fears. And sometimes even walking with fear. Hey, fear, let's go. With or without you, I need to take steps forward and create a better world. Keeping myself healthy, praying, meditation, exercises, timeouts, pampering ourselves once in a while. Absolutely. And yeah, Michelle, thank you. I think it is the Carpenters. I think it is the Carpenters that sang that song, What the World Needs Now is Love, right? I'm gonna find that somewhere and play that. Okay, looks good. So are we doing well? Can we move on and talk about self-care? Okay. Maribel, Fabiola, how are we doing with time? Can we still keep recording? Is this okay, or should we stop recording at this point and move into a dialogue without recording?
We
Thank
still
you,
have
Michelle.
some time if we'd like to keep going. I'm starting to see lots of great examples of self-care, and for the recording, I'd love to have our colegas hear what some of those examples of self-care are.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Let's get into that. We'll continue recording. I just want to highlight these messages on the chat. Marta says, "I love hearing everyone else's experience. It makes me feel like I'm not alone in these feelings. Thank you all for sharing. See how important it is to share? You're not alone. You're definitely not alone, Marta. From su servidor, from myself, humbly, and from a lot of those of us here, we all have at one point or another, or continue to feel sometimes lost, sometimes alone, at minimum, alone. Like I'm the only one that's going through this. No, you're not. We have here an amazingly rich group of individuals that are going at this all over the country. Okay. I'm loving this space, says Michelle. I am too, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you. That is really cool. Okay. So let's talk about self-care. Let me reshare again. So as we think about self-care, I want to ask you what your thoughts are. Okay? What is self-care to you? What is self-care? What are some of the things that you're doing for self-care? And I'm going to hold for just a second. I really want to hear the creativity in this room. What are you doing for self-care? And like Ilmari says, thank you for the conversation and also the curiosity. Definitely, I'm really curious at this point about self-care because that's a topic that's also misused. And I'll share a quote with you in a second. But I just want to hear first what you all are doing for self-care. Ooh, there's someone I like. Zelma says, I listen to music. That's my escape as well. That's my self-care as well, Zelma. And music definitely transports. Music takes me emotionally, and probably you and anybody else that loves music, to a different space. So you listen to music. Yes, what is your genre? Somebody says. Self-care is so important for our mental health. I love adult coloring. Marta, that sounds awesome. Adult coloring. I completely disconnect my brain and get lost in the coloring. That sounds wonderful. And it is very stress relieving. Those mandalas that sometimes you can go into a store, whether it's a dollar store or some of the other stores, and buy coloring books for adults. They sell them, and you can just sit there and and color for a few minutes. You do get lost in the colors. Wonderful. What else? Let's see. I try to hold space for mindful moments, just going for walks. I stop and take pictures of things I find beauty in and share them with people I know will enjoy them. Wow. Michelle, that sounds awesome. It is really cool to see the world through somebody else's lens. It's really cool because there's so many things that are beautiful in this world, so many little details that when you open up some of these photographers, amateur or professional photographers' web pages, you see amazing detail, the colors, the shapes, nature. It is truly enjoyable to do that. That sounds awesome, Michelle. And Michelle, where are you from? What part of the country are you calling in from? Just to give us a sense of what we might see if we were to visit your pictures. Decluttering my home space, says Lisa. Yes, the mind works so much better. We are so much more organized and so much more able to focus when we declutter our home space. And that's what Lisa does for self-care. That sounds great. Self-care is taking care of you like exercise and healthy eating, says Letty. Absolutely. Yeah, and we know that there are some foods that really weigh us down. And I'm not talking about physical weight. I'm talking about it makes us feel sluggish in our thoughts. We feel weighed down. All the highly processed foods that I sometimes eat. I had pizza twice this week. And yeah, my body's telling me you should have only done it once. Should have had healthier options, right? There are some foods that really weigh us down. I dance folklorico, says Elida. That sounds wonderful. Movement, physical activity, whether it's at your chair. I'm trying something new, and it's called rebounding, and I have a desk, I may move it up a little bit later in this webinar, but if you just kind of on your tiptoes, you just kind of rebound. Your feet don't even have to leave the floor. You can just kind of rebound. It's awesome for your lymphatic system. I've been fighting a bit of a cold, and I have actually found that I feel better when I rebound for a couple of minutes. I won't do that here because it looks kind of funny on the camera if I'm rebounding, but I encourage you to try different things. And there are things that we can do at home without having to go to the gym, without having to, buy anything expensive. I go for walks up some hills and the beach, go to a park, take a walk, take a bubble bath, read a book, read the Bible, paint, art, and craft. Arts and crafts, rather, and dancing. Mindfulness, contact with nature. Just have a me time, right, with a cup of coffee. Wow. Irmani, that's where I love soft rock and roll. Oh, it's soft rock and roll, says Selma for her genre. Okay, now we know. And there's quite a few others, so please read the chat and look at all of the ideas. But I want to go to something that Imani just talked about, that she wrote. Mindfulness, contact with nature, just have a me time. So now I want to share a different perspective about self-care. Because what we've been hearing is, what do we do? But I want to share this perspective. It might be a little bit hard to read, so I'm going to read it. I'm going to read what's on the screen right now. Let me just reduce this other screen. Okay, so this person is Dr. Thekla Brumder-Ross, and she's a psychologist, and she wrote this into the American Psychological Association. And she says, I think self-care has been taken over by capitalism and is fed to us as a laundry list of to-dos. There's exercise and nutrition and sleep and boundaries and bubble baths, which someone did mention. While it's beneficial to include those things in daily life, self-care shouldn't be used as a proxy for self-compassion. In other words, to replace self-compassion. There is a being versus doing distinction or difference. She's saying that there's a difference between being and doing. You can go through the motions of self-care without having any self-compassion. Wow. I'm not going to tell you what my thoughts are. I want to hear from you. What do you think? What do you think about being rather than doing in regards to self-compassion and self-care? What I do want to point out is that she uses self-compassion kind of along the lines of self-care. If we think about caring for others, does it not take compassion? So what if we changed our concept of self-care for us to self-compassion? Think about that shift from care to compassion towards us, towards ourselves. What do you think about what she's saying? How does that change the way you feel now about self-care and being compassionate towards yourself? What do you think?
Hi, this is Irmari. I have to say that I love the concept, and also I've been practicing that because sometimes I think that I've been hard on myself. And that means that I need to be more patient. I have to be more kind to myself. I have to know that I need that time. And that time usually I have learned that is, when I mention me time, is a time for me sometimes to enjoy the moment. Just doing nothing. It's like, okay, if I have, for example, if I have a lot of stress, if it's just to realize and to be more aware that I need that space. I need that time. I remember that a long time ago when I was attending one of your great workshop that I still remember, we were talking about coffee. For me, coffee is my me time. It's my time to just enjoy those minutes that I'm enjoying my coffee. But inside of me, I'm just thinking about my blessing. I'm thinking about something positive to continue the day or to continue the week, because sometimes we need that time, we need that space with ourselves to realize that we're worth it, that we have values, and that we have the strength to continue
Yeah.
and to fight the
Oh, I
good
love
fight.
Definitely. Idmari, thank you so much for that, for detailing what that me time means to you. Because when I first read that shift, that different perspective about self-care, it totally made sense. Because when we think about doing, and as she says, just having a laundry list of I gotta do this for myself, I gotta do that, I gotta take a bubble bath, I gotta go for a walk, I have to go to the gym, I have to eat better. My goodness, it becomes stressful in and of itself to care for yourself. And we're all talking and we're all in agreement that in order to have a healthier family, we as the leaders of that family have to be healthy. And what this psychologist says, it's not about doing, it's about being with yourself where health begins. Because you begin to be compassionate towards yourself. And if we think about it, colleagues, if we are compassionate towards someone, are we more apt to be conscious of what their needs are and meeting some of those needs, perhaps? Talking to them differently, acting towards them differently? That's when the doing begins, is once we are consciously aware of the compassion towards someone. And in this case, it's towards ourselves. And I hear this so many times. And Imani, I know that you mentioned a training that we did during COVID. It was back in 2020 where I had the pleasure of meeting you all the way from Florida, and I was always just impressed, that you were calling into that 48-hour training from Florida. But it holds true. We were talking about it back then, the caring for ourselves first. And that holds true even more nowadays, everyone, because life seems to be so much more complex.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with yourself. So maybe it is doing for yourself to schedule a 5-10 minute walk or a little coffee break. Or maybe it's just saying and feeling, I'm tired and I need to take a little break for myself. So I want to ask this question. If it is true that we want to be more compassionate and caring for ourselves first, what makes it hard to do so? What do you think, everyone? What makes it hard to do so? I know you all have said this to yourself at one point or another. I need to be a little more careful with myself. I need to treat myself better. I need to be more compassionate for myself. What makes it difficult to do it? One thing is to think it. We all have thought it. We have not all done it. Some of us have. What makes it difficult, though? Let me hear from some of you all. And I'd like to hear from those of you who are in the Midwest. Because, I can only imagine, I think Abby was calling in from one of the Midwest states. I can only imagine, Abby, when you have to go out there and, you open your window and say, okay, I got to go out and shovel the walkway, shovel the driveway, because I've got feet of snow piling up. Okay, my goodness. How do you find time to do self-care? Self-care in those moments where we're talking survival. You have to go out there and shovel snow for a few minutes. You have to go warm up the car. You have to do all these things that are different than what a lot of us aren't used to doing. How do you do that? How do you find time for self-care where you have to do so many other things during your day?
I feel that's the hard part. Especially I have a toddler. So it's harder, but I usually say to myself, well, if I want to keep him safe, I have to do these things, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel self-care is difficult just because the time, I work full time, I get off, I cook, I take him a bath, take myself a bath, and then the day is over. So
Yeah.
I think, and then my husband works night shift and stuff. So it's just the weekends, maybe, but the weekends are to clean.
I do know people that like to clean, and that is, and somebody said it earlier. I think Zelma said it earlier. The whole about thing about keeping your house organized and clean. Declutter. That is self-care for a lot of people because they reflect on things. I know that when I go through my desk and I declutter my desk, I think about things, I reflect on things, which is what I understand nowadays, a concept that's very hard for people to actually sit down and reflect on things they've done, on things places they've been, right? So on my desk, for example, I have this little guy. You may not be able to see him very well, but he's a little dinosaur. Yeah, he's there on my screen right now. Let me stop sharing for just a second. But he's there, and this little guy, I went on a walk with a friend of mine and found this little dinosaur, and I thought it was the cutest thing. And with this friend, we said, "Oh yeah, wherever we go together, take the dinosaur. We'll take a picture of that little dinosaur in a beautiful setting. Wherever we go for dinner, for breakfast, for wherever, take the dinosaur, and we'll take pictures with the dinosaur. That will remind us of that special moment, that hike where we were together." And I just thought it was so cute. And the other day, I saw it and I dusted it off on my desk, and it recalled so many wonderful memories. And in that moment, in that little space of time, I felt really good because that was a very special moment. And this little guy right here is then very special to me. And I was cleaning off and I forgot about him for a while until I cleaned off my desk. What do we have around us that we can think of, not so much in decluttering, but just in remembering and reflecting? That doesn't cost any money. It does have a cost, though. It costs time. And time seems to be one of those most difficult things to find nowadays. Time is more expensive even than eggs nowadays, right? And we all know how expensive eggs have gotten. How do you give up the time for yourself? So that's something that we have to be willing to do. What is the cost of doing this, of reflecting and giving to ourselves that compassion? Okay. So that's really something I think to consider. So as we, oh, I don't think, sorry everyone. Let me go back to my sharing. There we go. Okay. So as we talk about self-care, we're going to move into this other topic that we call self-validation. There's a very interesting connection. And when we talk about self-care, and we just looked at self-care from a different perspective, that's psychologists who said that caring for yourself is having compassion for yourself. And she says it's more about being caring and compassionate for yourself than about doing. How many of you have ever gotten a mani or a pedi or a mani pedi, right? And then at the end, you still feel stressed. Yes, you sat there, you were pampered, your nails look beautiful, your toenails look beautiful. You want to go, wear those sandals, but you still feel stressed. Like it really didn't mean much. It was just something to do, something to check off, right? Okay, so is that validation? Is that self-care and self-compassion? Is that equal to self-validation? It may not be. Maybe you said, "Oh, okay, I'm doing something for myself. I'm validating that I worked hard. I'm rewarding myself." So let's talk a little bit about self-care and self-validation. And I'll tell you why self-validation I thought was such an important topic when we were putting this together. I've worked with a lot of families. I've worked with thousands and thousands of families when I went to schools and did these parent education programs. And I'll tell you that a lot of parents felt like the young people in their home didn't value them. There was no validation. Oh, mom, you're amazing. Thank you so much, mom, for, doing the laundry this week and for cleaning up the house and mopping the floor, cooking us dinner, doing all these things that you as a mom do. Thank you. We really value you. We value the love that you give us. We value that time that you take away from your things to give to us. There was very little of that. And what do we say about the father figure in the home? How many times have we, even we, as their partner, if we have a male partner, how many of us sit down and provide that kind of feedback and say, I really value the things you do for the family? When was the last time we've done that? When was the last time we heard that from our partner or other family members? So self-validation is not about wanting to or expecting that somebody else gives us that validation. We have to validate ourselves first. That's the most important thing here. So self-care and self-compassion really has to do with validating and valuing who we are, what we bring to the family, and as we're talking about wellness, what we contribute to the family's wellness. So this particular slide says part of self-validation is to understand how one is feeling and where these feelings come from. And then to eventually manage these feelings and the impact they will have on those around me. As I value myself, the things that are most important to validate are how I feel, how I think, what my values are, and how all of this contributes to my family. Sometimes we second guess ourselves. Oh, I shouldn't be thinking that way. Oh, I should have thought of that before. I shouldn't feel this way. I'm wrong to feel these things. Right? So the questions here then is, how do I feel throughout the day and why? There is always a reason for why we feel the way we do throughout the day at any given moment. And this gets us into another topic, which is also highly important to understand, and that's the topic of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is understanding what we feel throughout any given moment of the day, especially the harder moments of the day, and why. Where do these feelings come from? Is it the fact that my kids left this morning, didn't even touch the breakfast that I got up early to prepare for them? Or maybe it's the worry about, and in many homes throughout this country, we don't know how the political world is going to impact our family. All the policy changes, the laws, all those executive orders that have been recently signed that might have an effect on our family that given day. Maybe it's the worry about that. And we don't want to be open about those feelings because we don't want to worry our family. But then we're worried about those things. And while the family may not know exactly what's happening in our thoughts, they see the worry. They feel the worry. So are we being true to ourselves? Are we validating and valuing our thoughts, our feelings? And that is all part of self-care. What are we feeling? What are we thinking throughout the day and why? How are we managing these feelings? And in those moments that we're thinking and feeling, how are others responding to us and why? Is our partner coming down a little hard on us? There you go again. You're worrying about these things. There you go again. You're getting angry. I don't even know why you're getting angry, but there you go. You've got that angry face. You're talking harsh. You're talking in a harsh tone. Did you catch yourself talking to the kids and being harsh with them this morning? Maybe we don't even realize we're doing those things, and we're getting that feedback from those around us. So let's talk about those difficult moments. Let's talk about those for just a second. What do you think? Our vision today during this time is to create better wellness, stronger wellness within our family. So let's open up a little bit about with ourselves first. Self-care and compassion towards myself. Am I validating me? Am I validating my thoughts and my feelings about whatever may be going on in my life in this moment? I haven't had breakfast, perhaps. I haven't had my cup of coffee. I'm hungry and I haven't had my cup of coffee. Good heavens, what a combination. Right? What's going on in our life? Maybe we had something very positive happen this morning. Maybe we did take that walk in the morning and feel like, okay, I think I can handle today. Maybe that's what happened this morning. What's going on? What's making life difficult for ourselves and therefore for our families? So let's go through some of the tips for self-care and family well-being that everyone in the family can follow. Again, as we've talked about, things we can do, behavior change. If we're not, we may be conscious of them, but if we're not practicing these on a regular basis, here is again a good reminder. Just starting with the top and working clockwise around this really nice image, Fabiola. Thank you for the image. First of all, sleep habits. I don't know about you, but as we age, as we move from year to year, our bodies have less resistance to less sleep. Those of us who had the experience of being in school, or when we were young, we'd go out with our friends, or in some way we were able to come back, right? We were able to rebound physically after staying out or staying up all night or most of the night. But as we age, we can't do that as easily. Some people feel it in their 30s. Oh, I can't keep up with these younger kids in their 20s anymore, when just a few years back, we were able to, right? And so sleep habits have a lot to do with our emotional wellness. That is definitely proven in science. The more we sleep, 7, 8 hours, ideally a night, the better we are to resist stress, focus, have more patience. If we're able to focus, we have more patience. We're more tolerant. We can take on more things. We're able to listen more carefully and more intently when others speak. We're able to really care for ourselves. Also, the link between sleep habits and healthy eating and obesity. And they use the word obesity. I'm just saying, if we're not happy with where we are in our weight, has a lot to do with how much we're able to sleep. Building up cortisone, but because of stress in the body, sleep helps reduce the amount of cortisol. I'm sorry, in the body, the stress hormones, not just one, but several of stress hormones are reduced when we're able to sleep well. Strengthening our spiritual self. I remember a friend of mine who was in my life for quite some time used to get up, and the first thing that person would say is, "Oh boy, another day." And that was a little bit trying. That was a little bit difficult to manage for some time, because I'm very different. I wake up and I'm like looking forward to what this new day brings. And so, what is our spiritual self like? Are we hopeful? Are we hopeful that the day will be better? Are we loving, right? Are we trusting? Are we practicing some of those spiritual things that have nothing to do with religion in this context, in this conversation? Maybe that's where we learn them. from is our religious practice, our religious beliefs. But when we just isolate things like hope, optimism, that really kind of talks to a different part of our self, our spiritual self, our existential part of our brain. What's my purpose? What's my purpose for being here? And we find oftentimes when we reflect on that, that we can really heighten our sense of our spiritual self. We have a greater purpose. We believe in a greater power and a greater influence than just getting through the motions of the day. So taking the time out to strengthen our spiritual self is incredibly important. Nourishing and hydrating our bodies. I don't know about you, but if you go through the day without drinking too much water, at the end of the day, again, there's less patience, less tolerance. You're less able to listen and practice that active listening that we have to do at the end of the day. Sometimes when our kids get home at the end of the day, it's like, how was school? And all we want is just to say, good. And then, okay, good, they're home. Nothing, they're not bleeding, they're not hurt, they're home safe and sound. I can go on about my business. Hydrating ourselves and nourishing our body in the right way, in a healthy way, allows us to have more of this active listening and more focus to listen to things that are happening at the end of our family's day and to listen to ourselves as well at the end of the day. Engaging in physical activity, recommended 20 to 30 minutes a day. That could be walking around the block with our children and asking them how school was, engaging them in active conversation as we walk, physical activities, anything that involves movement for 20 to 30 minutes, like a good walk. Now, I keep thinking of Abby in that snow. And Abby, I don't know if you're able to walk, but maybe walking inside the house, right? Or doing some squats or something like that, getting up and doing some stretching. That is also moving your body, moving your circulation, moving your muscles instead of just sitting all day. Taking time to develop conscious breathing. Oh my goodness, the importance of breathing. As we stress throughout the day, there are times when we sometimes don't breathe. We don't breathe like we normally should. So like our body wants us to, and get that oxygen up to the brain, right? So conscious breathing is something really important to do. Remember to breathe. Remember to take deep breaths. Fill your lungs whenever you think about it. And those of us who have that alarm on the phone or whatever, set an alarm every hour and just take a moment to breathe, to reflect on how that last hour has been. Which strong emotions did you go through? Why? Take a moment, take a note, make a note to yourself so you can go back and visit that through conscious breathing, right? You can do that and take a note to go back and visit that later on during the day. So again, those are tips for ourselves. Those are tips for our family members. But now let's talk about these last couple of slides just on validation alone. We talked about self-validation. Now I want to just give a few highlights on validation within the family. Again, we're leaders here. We're learning about this stuff. Our family members may not have learned about this topic today or at all. So now we have to take it back. We have to practice it. So what is validation? Validation is, again, highlighting the value. When you validate something, you highlight its value. And in this case, this signifies, by validating your family members, you signify that you acknowledge and accept the other person's thoughts, feelings, and experiences. You may not be in agreement with them, but you are in acceptance of them. It doesn't mean that things don't need to change. It doesn't mean that people can't change. It means that simply you're listening to that human being open up about how they think, how they feel, and what values all of this is based on. They feel heard. They feel understood. They feel respected. And that brings people closer together. In validation, when you value and highlight something from somebody else, you're highlighting their strengths and not their weaknesses. Think about that. When you see a person through their strengths and not their weaknesses, they look completely different. They look completely different. You might even find someone more attractive by looking at their strengths first rather than their weaknesses. Your kids will open up to you if you first identify the things they did well that day, and then in a very sensitive way, talking about the things that could be done better. So highlighting strengths and not weaknesses. Validation is essential for building strong, healthy connections, and it fosters, it creates, it impacts and inspires trust building within the family. It's one of the basic blocks of building trust is validation. And finally, it shows you care about their perspective, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. These are the reasons for validating. This is what we get by validating. Now let's talk a little bit about the importance of doing so. It, as we said, creates a safe space. We said having a strong family for a lot of us means having a safe space at the end of the day where we can feel like we're home, like we're with family and caring people. So it creates a safe space when we validate, when we are validating. It enhances intimacy. And the word intimacy means closeness. It doesn't always mean physical closeness. It's, in this case, more about emotional closeness. It enhances intimacy. People feel close. People feel like they can open up and trust you. It reduces conflict. Why does it reduce conflict? Why, when you validate people, does it reduce conflict? Because people feel heard. One of the main reasons for conflict between people is that they don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. And so when you validate someone, their thoughts, their feelings, their values, their experience, it reduces conflict because people feel understood. They feel heard. And it boosts self-esteem. Imagine if every day you found time to highlight 3 strengths in every family member. How would that make them feel? They'd feel proud. They'd feel validated. I don't want to be redundant with the word, but really this validation is, yes, this is what I'm about. And finally, mom can see it. Finally, this other person in my family can see the good in me, the strength in me. And that boosts self-esteem. And then the ways to validate, let's talk about that. Let's just put this out there. Ways to validate. One of the first things that we want to do is we want to empathize. We want to empathize with people and try to see things from their perspective. We cannot be our son or daughter. We cannot be our parents. We cannot be our spouse or our partner. We cannot. So trying to, empathizing is asking them about their experience. Have them tell us what it is that they experienced, why they feel that way, why they think that way, and trying to put ourselves in their shoes. That's an incredibly important thing to do. Because this, again, helps them understand that they're heard. It helps them understand that we care enough to understand not just what they're telling us, but the why. Not just what they're feeling, what they're thinking, but the why. Now, to do this empathizing, putting ourselves in their shoes, it requires a lot of active listening. And if I were to do this webinar here with this phone in my hand and keep looking at the phone every once in a while to see if any important messages or important emails have come through, or how many likes on that Facebook post I've gotten since yesterday, what do you think? Is that active listening? How would it feel if I invited you for a cup of coffee and said, you know what, before we start, let me do something. Let me put this away. As a matter of fact, I won't even keep it in my pocket because I don't want to feel it vibrate. Let me just put this in my purse. Let me leave it in my car. And for these next few minutes, you and what you tell me are going to be the most important messages in these next few minutes. I want to understand you. I want to ask you questions to tell me why. And there's two ways of asking why. Why pushes sometimes people against the wall. Why did you do that? But the other kind of why is the why to understand. That sounds amazing. That sounds interesting. You know, tell me a little bit more about why you decided to do that. I want to understand. It's a different way of asking why. And it gets us much more information than why did you do that? And there's other suggestions around active listening. We can do that when we talk about communication in another webinar. And finally, the last two, reflecting on their emotions. When we reflect on their emotions, basically we say, so when this happened, you felt angry because you're basically being a mirror and mirroring back or reflecting what they have told you. And think about that when you've had a difficult or a sensitive conversation with someone about something important to you. When they reflect back what you thought, what you felt, and why, do you feel understood? Do you feel listened? Do you feel validated? This is what we want to do in the family, right? And you may be the first person who learns about this in your family, even perhaps more than the other adult members in your family. You're a leader, you're a health educator, you're a promotora. And it's important for us to take this back and apply it in the family so we learn to apply it in one of the most challenging environments so that when you then go back and apply it in the community, it's much easier. And then the final one, which is the final way to validate that we have here, is simply to validate even when you disagree. Other people will not always see things our way or agree with everything we have to say. They will have different thoughts. They will have different feelings towards anything, even if we lived it together. So what we want to do is we want to say, I do hear what you're telling me. I do understand that this is how you feel and why. I'm not in agreement with it. I see it a different way, but I do understand what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and why. Where does it come from? That's incredibly important to do. And so in the last 2 minutes that we have, final thoughts. I'd love to hear your final thoughts. We would love to hear your final thoughts about this webinar, what you liked about it, what could be better. And I'm going to stop sharing at this moment. I want to hear yours before we move on. Okay. Any couple of thoughts? I know we're at time, colegas, and I'd love to hear just very, very quickly a couple of folks who would like to just share final thoughts.
Hi, this is Irmari again. For me, it's been a great opportunity to reflect, to think more about what I can do, not only, as you mentioned, to validate myself, but about self-care and how to help the community during these difficult times that we are having. I greatly appreciate your time and the opportunity to be here